Good evening. My name is Keliia Ben. I am the Executive Director of the Native American Arts Center at Idyllwild Arts. Thank you for joining us this evening for the Michael Caboti Lecture Series. This summer, we had the opportunity to showcase lunchtime lectures. They were so much fun that we wanted to put them all together and share them with you online so we could enjoy them once again. The final lecture that we're sharing with you is with Jackie Keliia, who is the creator of Good Medicine Comedy Showcase. She also welcomed her friend Sierra Taylor Ornelas. We hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome. Let's go ahead and get started. So we want you to grab food while it's nice and hot and then to come back and to join us for our discussion with Jackie Keliia and Sierra Taylor Ornelas. Before I turn it over, I want to introduce Wendy Weston, who has been our guest chef this week, and she'll share a few words about the meal that we're all going to share. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Keliia, and welcome everybody. Today we're going to turn it around and have some fun. But before I get started, I would like to recognize Utisha Chi and Angel Joe. Come on out. They're training, they're interns from the Navajo Technical University College of Culinary Arts. And they've been doing some incredible things. So the cake you're going to eat today, totally made by Utisha, so enjoy it. So we talk about humor, we talk about the Native experience, so we're going to put the real experience in your face today. The food that you've been eating all week, you know, a lot of it is healthy, a lot of greens, and the reality is that that food costs money. And when you're forced to live in a reservation and you have reservation life, we had the opportunity to gather those foods prior to the reservation period. We became hungry once we got to the reservations, and so the government gave us commodity food. So what did we do? We had to make our own type of diet. And most of you, when you see what you're going to eat today, you're going to be appalled by it. But you know what? That's our comfort food. And so this is food that we use and that we eat with and that we have happiness from. So the natives in here are going to get a big treat because it's like fried potatoes and Spam. And, you know, I know a lot of people say stuff about Spam, but it's a reality. So we want to show you, you know, right now a lot of our reservations are food deserts. And we are through programs that are happening in tribal communities and across the country. With the help of some big grant money from the USDA, we're reversing that and turning our communities back into viable places to harvest food that's actually healthy and good for our bodies. But today, enjoy fried potatoes, corn, and Spam on a homemade tortilla. The tortilla is full of gluten, the potatoes, the Spam, and the corn don't have gluten. There's a Napolito salad, which is from Arizona. It's prickly pear cactus with red onions, carrots, and tomatoes, and a chili lime vinaigrette. And then, of course, the butter and gluten and white sugar and white flour chocolate cake. So that's what we eat on the res when we celebrate.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get started. And thank you for joining us this week for the three-part lecture series, the Michael Caboti Lecture Series. If you don't know, Michael Caboti was one of the originators and creators of Native Arts Festival Week with my former colleague Heather and Gerald Clark and others, and Joe Baker. So we like to recognize him and his contributions through the continuation of this very special lecture series. I also wanted to give a huge shout out to the team that I get to work with every day. Olivia Webb is the assistant to the Native American Arts Center. She's right back there. She makes it all happen. So a big round of applause for Olivia. And I've had the honor and privilege. This is the first year after 75 years or so that Native American Arts has existed here at Idyllwild, that the whole program this summer was completely run by women. So. myself and two other really strong women, Taria Smith, who is moderating the discussion and just kind of like keeping the flow going. She's the editor from News from Native California. And Emily Clark, where is Emily? There she is. Emily Clark is a poet. She's also IA alum. She just finished an internship with 8A Books and News from Native California, and is a wealth of knowledge and fresh breath of fresh air to work with, and Taria. So we talked a lot about our theme this year, and I think I had mentioned it before, like at the opening, for those of you who are new. We tackled some very tough topics the last couple of years. Last year was institutional critique, and that got real quick. So this year we were like, dang it, we want to have some fun with our work, and we want to laugh, and in that way, you know, perhaps heal. I think wounds, old and small, are able to be healed through the power of art and laughter and humor and joy and, you know, a lot of humility when we approach that. So thank you guys for your help throughout the year, and don't forget to join us tonight and tomorrow. And then my last bit, I do want to thank our sponsors, the benefactors who make, through whose generous support makes this all possible. Agua Caliente Band of Keliia Indians, the Keliia Band of Indians, the Chickasaw Nation, Morongo Band of Mission Indians, San Manuel Band of Serrano Indians, San Pascual Band of Mission Indians, Saboba Foundation, and Saboba Band of Listeño Indians, TASIN, Tribal Alliance of Sovereign Indian Nations, an anonymous foundation, and we had an additional sponsor this year, KVCR, NPR, and FNX. So big thank you to all of our sponsors for making this all possible. Yeah, I'll turn it over. We're gonna play music called Mike today.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Keliia, for opening us up today. My name is Taria Smith. I'm a very proud enrolled tribal member of the Torres Martinez Desert Keliia, just in the eastern end of the Coachella Valley, so down the mountain and keep going east, and or like you're going towards Blythe, I think. and that's where I'm from. I'm the editor of News from Native California magazine, which is a quarterly magazine that focuses specifically on tribes that are indigenous to California. And I'm also the California Indian Publishing Director at 8A Books. So I'm super excited today to introduce our participants in today's program. The first I will introduce is a fellow California native who was actually on the cover of News from Native California magazine last year. And I believe she's you went to Cal, right?
I did, yeah.
Go Bears, okay. It's Jackie Keliia. She's a tribal member of Washoe and Yerington Paiute peoples. She's a stand-up comedian, writer, actor, and producer based in Oakland, California. You can find her in the 2020 or 2021 release of We Had a Little Real Estate Problem, the unheralded story of Native Americans and comedy. She's been featured on Comedy Central, Team Coco, Illuminative's 25 Native American comedians to follow, and was Comic of the Week on the Jackie and Laurie Show. She wrote for the web series You're Welcome, America, and has been featured in Vulture, Uprocks, the LA Times, and KQED. Jackie has opened for Judah Freilander, Nikki Glazer, and was featured on the First Nations Comedy Experience streaming on. I didn't even know. I should have read this closer. I could have watched this before I came. Streaming on Amazon Prime Video. Jackie's a regular at Bay Area venues and has performed at San Francisco Sketch Fest, Punchline, San Francisco, and Cops Comedy Club, and she's super nice too. Okay, and next I'm pleased to introduce Sierra Teller Ornelas of the Navajo Nation. She's a showrunner, screenwriter, filmmaker, and
Not a filmmaker.
No.
Not a filmmaker.
Sorry.
Everyone says that, but I'm not.
Okay, I shouldn't have looked on Wikipedia, my bad. And Weaver from, are you Weaver? Yeah, okay,
Weaver,
very good.
yeah.
Okay, from Tucson, Arizona.
Award-winning.
She's one of 3 co-creators of the scripted NBC Peacock's comedy series Rutherford Falls. Have you guys all seen that, by the way? Yay! I love that show! Okay, if you haven't had the opportunity to check it out, you really, really should. It's really delightful and funny. And Sierra also did writing and production work on shows such as Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Happy Endings, Splitting Up Together, and Superstore. Ornelas has also written and contributed to This American Life and the New York Times. In 2019, Ornelas signed a multi-year development deal with Universal Television, beginning with the Peacock sitcom Rutherford Falls. Thank you both so much for joining us today. All right, to get to the sort of the serious stuff, done with first, I wanted to talk a little bit about the writer's strike.
Oh, yeah.
That was,
What would you like to know?
no, just your participation as a writer, and everything like that. If you've, what your perspectives are and everything.
Sure. Before I start, Sarah Nelson Tapahindishlay, Nakadnet Bashing, Twahagudi Dishache, Do Nakadnet Additionally. Hello and welcome. My name is Sierra Ornelas. I am a member of the Navajo Nation. I am also Mexican American. I am Edgewater clan, born for the Mexican people. Thank you so much for having us here today. I feel like I know a lot of you because you're all my mom's weaving students. So that's why you've all seen Rutherford Falls, I'm assuming. No, but shout out to my mom, Barbara Teller Ornelas, and Linda Teller Pete in the back, and my son, who's one of her students, Javier. I love Idyllwild so much because I feel like I kind of grew up here because my mom and my aunt have been teaching here for a couple of decades now. So thank you so much for having me here today. So the writer's strike. I no longer have an overall deal at the moment because it's been suspended by the studios. So no money coming in currently. So thank you, Idyllwild Arts, for this lovely gig. But yes, so it's a very long story. I don't know how much I don't want to get too much in the weeds. There's a lot of information. If you follow like the WJ West on Instagram, be careful with a lot of the trades because a lot of them are pro studio. But basically what's happening to writers is happening to, every labor position. If you look at what's going on right now, where there was a really wonderful way where we made television and you think like, oh, she made a television show. She must have like all this money and like da 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 da. But what's happening is the pay for writers has gone down. So a showrunner is now making like what a writer 20 years ago starting used to make. And for some people, like you see these, Shonda Rhimes and Ryan Murphy, they're making like hundreds of millions of dollars. So there's still people making lots and lots of money. But there's also a lot of people who are making shows where, we've all seen like it used to be 22 episodes. Now it's like 8 episodes. Now instead of having, my first job, there were 17 writers in the room. And now there are certain rooms where you don't even have a room. You have this thing called a mini room. And there's like 4 writers and they have 10 weeks to break a whole season of television. Whereas before, there was a whole middle class to television writing where you could kind of wind your watch and work on a network show for a year. I used to work for, 10 months, and then you get this thing called a residual when they re-aired your show. And so you could really earn a living wage. And now the young writers who are working are having to go from gig to gig, 10-week thing to 10-week thing. So they're not able to make their health insurance to the union. They're not able to qualify for certain things. And they are, with inflation, things like owning a home or having a long-term career just seem really impossible. And it's a situation now where the younger writers are having such a vastly different experience than the seasoned writers that it's an existential crisis as to like what television will look like. And so every, 10, 15 years, writers have striked. When the invention of the television came and all these people started seeing old movies on television, the older writers were like, wait, you have to pay us for our labor. Because it really all starts with the writer. When the invention of VHS tapes, there was another strike demanding pay for that. And so with AI, with streaming, it's sort of, we come from a long legacy of labor. And so I'm very confident that we will win. I think it's just gonna take a while because we're dealing with a lot of these tech companies who are very used to busting up unions, but they're not used to dealing with established unions. And you also have, I think, a lot of not just, TV writers, especially comedy writers, so self-deprecating, but I feel like it's not just us, it's the costume folks, it's all of the labor, it's all of the crew, it's all of the, everyone is hurting right now. Everyone is having a hard time making their payments, sending their kids to college, doing the things that the people who came before them, it was just a given. And so I'm confident that we're all sort of banding together. You have a lot of like people like Teamsters who have refused to cross the picket line. And so the WJ has actually like stopped productions. We've like shut down productions. We're kind of, trying to like be a drag on the studios so that they'll lose money long enough that they will give us what we need. So, but it is one of those things where it might sound on the surface like, what are these rich people complaining about? But there's actually, and I will also mention too, it's disproportionately affecting writers of color. It's disproportionately affecting working class writers, people who didn't have family members that went to Harvard. It's disproportionately affecting those people because these smaller wages, these smaller orders, unless you have rich parents who can like pay for your apartment, you can't stay and work these sort of, beginning jobs the way that other people can. So that's a lot of information I threw at you, but that's sort of the headline of the strike. We're on it'll be day 53 on Monday, but we're all, every studio is striking. Every writer is out there picketing. We did like a native theme picket last week, which was really beautiful. And so, yeah, I think like unfortunately, these companies have starved a lot of the labor. So I think they thought we would be more tired by now, but we're used to not getting paid on time. We're sort of used to being treated poorly. So I think they're in for a fight.
Jackie, can you talk a little bit about the Good Medicine comedy showcase and how you developed it?
Oh, sure.
So Good Medicine is an all-native comedy showcase. I started producing in the Bay Area in Oakland, and it started off as a virtual fundraiser actually for tribes impacted by COVID-19. So we had our first show May 2020. We raised over $8,000 in one show. It was so cool. And we highlighted a lot of like native comics and then also had a couple of non-native comics on there, like Lori Kilmartin. She like wrote for Conan. We had River Butcher, also a writer and a comic. And so it was really cool. We had like Dallas Goldtooth. So a lot of good fundraising came out of that. And then folks were like, hey, we want to see more of this. So in 2021, I held our first ever show at the California Shakespeare Theater. It's this outdoor amphitheater. It's gorgeous. And we sold out our first show and since then have steadily been growing. And this is actually, we're bringing it to Idyllwild. So tomorrow at 7 o'clock, we've got a Good Medicine show I'm hosting. We've got Tatanka Means there, Adrian Chalapa. We have Wolf, oh gosh, why am I forgetting his last name? We have Wolf Brown, there we go. He's T.O. from Arizona. And so yeah, it's exciting because, in the Bay Area, we have a mixed audience. We definitely do have Bay Area Indians, I'm part of that community. That's where my family comes from. But we also have like non-native folks. So it's really a good opportunity for them to like hear modern, diverse perspectives from like native perspectives, We've got gay comics, we've got straight comics, we've got comics who are moms. Some of them don't even want to be a mom, it's wonderful. So I think it's really cool because it is kind of narrative change, like the native folks in the audience feel super seen, they get every joke, and the non-native audience like gets a chance to really get to know us, and I think it's a wonderful way that we get to sort of retell the narrative about who Native people are from our own perspective. And we just got invited to New York City. So Good Medicine is going to be debuting at the Perlman Performing Arts Theater in New York in February. So if you guys want to come on out, we have the show, just plug, we have the show happening on February 9th, and then we have a panel the next day on Native comedy. So it's exciting to get to talk about sort of where Native humor is going. So that's Good Medicine. You guys should support it. Hey, come to the show tomorrow.
Okay, so for the both of you, can you talk a little bit about who or where you get your comedic inspiration from, you as a writer and Jackie's stand-up?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think my first comic influences were my parents. My parents were both very silly people. My husband and I are very silly, and I'll tell my son, I'm like, you're lucky you have silly parents. Like, it's the way to go. It's better than serious parents. And they both really just kind of rewarded me for being funny. I could get out of trouble for being funny. They backed me up when I got in trouble at school and that sort of thing. And then my dad wanted to be a stand-up growing up, and he did one show at this bar called The Hut in Ajo, Arizona. Killed, never did it again, which I don't know why. But I remember like finding his joke book as a kid, and whenever we'd watch, he had this like idea of like there's certain movies you should just see, and a lot of them were comedies. So like Saturday Night Live and Animal House and a lot of that like Lampoon stuff. And then just really like my family is all really funny. Like my grandma had a very dark sense of humor. My mom is very sarcastic and as a weaver does a lot of talks like these. And she kind of figured out that if you were funny, you could keep people awake longer talking about sort of headier things. And then I'm an India market baby. So talking to people and selling my mom's work and kind of getting them to understand, what we do really helped me when it came to like pitching shows and that sort of thing. Jackie and I sold a show last year to NBC called City Indians, and we're still waiting to hear about it now. But one of the funnest things was like pitching with you because you were like, oh, you are an Indian market baby.
Yeah.
Like you kind of got what we were doing. But yeah, those are like my main comedic influences. And then also I feel like I just loved lady stand-ups growing up. It was like Carol Burnett and Margaret Cho and like all them, like Maria Bamford. I feel like there's like an endless well of comedy, both like in my family and then just, on Comedy Central.
Yeah, I would say it's the same. Like my family is my biggest inspiration. My parents always were joking, constantly laughing, and just my dad just making fun of everyday situations. And that's how I grew up, was just a lot of humor in our household. And yeah, just similar. We had like a lot of movies that we watched on repeat. If my dad liked one thing, we'd go to Blockbuster, we'd have that VHS in, we'd burn it, all week. And so I've just committed dialogue to my brain, So even today we'll just be talking in lines from Ghostbusters. You know what I mean? I collect spores, molds, and fungus. Like my dad will just come out of the woodwork and just say something random and we'll all laugh, So I think that was like definitely it's part of my family and how we communicate with the world is we're very humorous about it. And we're not very serious people, I think. And I think that's been helpful because there is a lot of serious stuff that happens in life. And you can like be real, down about it. And I always kind of take the other route, And I think that's kind of how Good Medicine kind of got started is whenever people like hear about Native stuff, they get real deep on the heavy stuff so early. And I'm like, can we laugh real quick? Can we... Can we dissipate some of this tension, you guys? So that's kind of my approach in comedy. But yeah, definitely lots of movies. I loved Chris Farley growing up. I wanted to be him. I was like that, whatever that is. So I was totally the ham at the family parties. Like my aunties would be like, get in here and do that bit you did, And I was, But I was also like told I got to go to college. Like that was like drilled into my brain at a young age. And so I did the whole professional development route. And then I was like, oh, I'm gonna drop all this so I can go follow my dreams in comedy. So, it came a little later in life, but I'm happy it came. And that's kind of my influences growing up.
Okay, I have a very specific question, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. Yesterday, I was talking with a fellow tribal member yesterday about the character Reagan on Rutherford Falls and all her outfits. I love clothes. My late aunt, my mom's only sister, was huge into clothes. And so I loved all of Reagan's outfits and all her jewelry, and it was cute and familiar. And can you talk a little bit about how that came together for her, for the character?
Yeah, definitely. So the character of Regan is loosely based on myself. And I don't have a lot of style. It's like mostly like V-neck t-shirts and stuff, like for a very long time. But Kirsten Mann is an incredible costume designer. She did all of the costumes for like The Good Place and the show Loot, and she's done like a lot of movies, and she's amazing. And so she kind of came with this idea, and I was like, that's not it. I was like, and so I brought in all the Native writers, and we had like Bobby Wilson and Tasma Chavez and Jana Schmeeding and Ty LeClaire, and they all have like distinct styles that are totally different, and it's like a pastiche of, I remember like initially she wanted to do something where it was like, I think it was like she goes from being like not wearing a lot of Native stuff to like wearing more Native stuff as she kind of gets closer to the Terry character, which is like traditionally how you would do it in like a traditional show. But I was like, no, she's Native. She's Native when she starts and she's Native when she ends. It's about like power and control. It's not about, so then she started putting her more like in business suits, but throughout the entire process, she was still wearing Native jewelry. And so I would show her, I was like, look at Tasba, she's a jock, but she's wearing like turquoise earrings and a Jordan jersey and like sweatpants, but also like, Gucci glasses or whatever. And like Bobby Wilson will wear like a beaded everything, but he's also got like a real streetwear sense. And I was like, it's all the same thing together. It's not one or the other. And so she was really excited about that. And then it's a small town. And so we're all friends with a lot of Native designers like Jamie Akuma and Bethany Yellowtail and all of them really. And Jana herself was a beadwork artist and we knew a lot of great beaders. And Jana had an idea of that every episode she would feature a beadwork artist. And so it was weird because when we were making the show, nobody knew who we were. So we would ask for stuff and they'd be like, well, you got to buy it or you got to, and we were like, yes, of course we will pay, because growing up as the daughter of a Native artist, I was like, everyone gets paid. But we were hoping to at least get like like first dibs on stuff, and they were like, no, that Instagram starts at 8 a.m. Like, so we had these like like Emmy winning costume directors being like, I have to get up at 4 a.m. because like this res like is 3 hours away and the drop starts at 9 a.m. and like they were on it to their credit. And it wasn't until season 2 people were like, we'll send you some stuff and we'll because but all the Native artists were so excited because they'd been on like The Walking Dead and they'd been on, Yellowstone, and they were like, we didn't get paid, it was all like paid and exposure. And I was like, no, everyone's gonna get paid. But it was really important to me that all of the Native characters had their own style that blended well. It's sort of like us right now. It's like we're wearing beadwork, but we're also wearing, boots and tennies. Like it's a mixture of things, and that was like really important for us.
That's so cool, thanks. Okay, so for one more question before I open it up for everyone else if they have questions, and I'm sure you all do. How does comedy teach or how do you find that how do you use comedy to teach people that aren't tribal people, that aren't Native people about who we are and about how do you kind of help demystify us as tribal people through comedy, if you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think personally television is still a very intimate medium. Like you still watch it at home or you watch it on your phone, you watch it in bed. And it really does, it sounds very highfalutin, but I do believe that television changes lives. Like when I was a kid, there was a very silly episode of Punky Brewster where this girl got stuck in a fridge. And it was like, don't go in fridges. And I remember, I was like, even now, if I see a fridge on the side of the road, I was like, they should tie that down because someone could go into that fridge. And I get so scared. Yes. And when I worked on a show called Happy Endings, we had, people come in from like kind of not Planned Parenthood, but people who are promoting sexual education and that sort of thing. And they were taking us through like different types of like prophylactics and birth control and this, and our showrunner was like, wait, what? Like he didn't know the information, and we're like, you should know this information. He's like, so sex one time you can get pregnant? I'm like, yes, dude, what are you talking about? And so they were like, this is why, and they said that, Mothers Against Drunk Driving in the 80s, you had all those very special episodes in the 80s, and part of that was they saw drunk driving go down wildly. If you look at, Ellen coming out on the Ellen show to Modern Family, you can track 10 years after all of this LGBTQ plus legislation. And if you look at a lot of shows getting canceled and being taken away, and you see sort of what's happening now, I also think that shift of when voices are taken away and canceled, that also has an effect. And so when I finally got to have a Native TV show, I was like, I don't want to waste this opportunity. This might be some people's first opportunity to even hear a story told by a Native person. And so I went with edutainment. I was like, I want to talk about NAGPRA. I want to talk about, repatriation. I want to talk about the Native experience, but I also want us to have fun and be silly and funny. And that's when it helps to cast someone like Jana Schmieding, who's just like so lovable, also wanted to be Chris Farley. We all wanted to be Chris Farley. And so it also like humanizes us and creates that relationship. I think if you look at a lot of television shows, like to use my other side, Latino shows, if you only see a Narcos, drug pin, dusty border story, then that's all you're going to think of, certain demographics. If you're from a town where there aren't a lot of Latinos, I don't know what town that would be, but you have a small-minded idea of something. And so and that's why it's so exciting is it's not obviously just my show, but like Reservation Dogs is completely different than Rutherford Falls. And then Dark Winds was completely different than that. And then Echo is going to be so much different than what we have now. And so there's so many opportunities, like the variety of it was so exciting to me because I think everyone thought like they'll all be the same shows. Like, why do we need more than one? And then obviously that just like wasn't the case.
Yeah, totally. Definitely. And as a watcher of Rutherford Falls, like I was so I loved seeing Regan's character get her boo, I was like, ooh, and then she gets her lamb. Okay, yeah, exactly. And it just was, that's what it is. Like it does change lives. Like I felt so seen, just watching this show as like an audience member. And it was like, oh, look at all this. Like it's so cool to be able to have those stories be told because otherwise you're not seeing them, before your show. There wasn't like a Native sitcom out there doing that, So big ups to Sierra for making that happen. Yeah, and then I think for like me in terms of like edutainment, like I perform predominantly to non-Native audiences. A lot of my material is it's for non-Native audiences because not everything translates. Like there's just a certain understanding you kind of have to have in order to understand certain jokes. And so in San Francisco, like I'd like to mess with the audience and like to let them know, you know? And so I have this one joke, I mean, I might spoil it, you guys will hear it tomorrow, but you know, it's one of my favorites because I'm Washoe Paiute, and so I try to tell them I'm Washoe Paiute, and they're like, huh? You know, they don't know what that is. And so I'm like, you know, like Tahoe, right? Do you guys know like Tahoe? They're like, yeah. They get all excited, their eyes light up, and I'm like, yeah, Lake Tahoe is the ancestral homeland of my people, the Washoe people. Yeah, so this past winter when you were skiing the slopes of Heavenly Valley, just know you were desecrating the sacred lands of my ancestors. You know, they get so uncomfortable and I love it. And I'm like, yeah. You know, the buttholes get tight, you know, and I'm just like, look, if Tahoe bums you out, wait till you find out what happened to America, you know? Like, it's just, and it's good. I want to keep them on their toes because they're not hearing this anywhere else. You know what I mean? And so I think, like, I would like to think that the audience, when they leave that show, they go, oh, shit. You know what I mean? Like, because it all is sacred land. It's all native land. Everything's native land here in America, right? And so I think I love to tease them about it, but also I really do think that comedy has a way to change hearts and minds, and there really is a lot of power in humor to sort of move the needle on social justice. And so I keep those jokes in there, you know, and I keep doing them because it gets uncomfortable. One time, oh my God, I performed in a predominantly very wealthy, very white community, and I did that joke and they hated it, you know. And then I found out in the green room, they're like, yeah, because everybody owns a cabin in Tahoe here. And I was like, well, hopefully I get a key to one of them soon, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of how I blend it all together. And, you know, I try to, like, I don't mind punching down on certain things, you know, like patriarchy, you know, that kind of stuff, because it's fair, they'll be fine, the men. And, you know, but I also don't want to punch down on, you know, I try to really like uplift women and people of color and queer folks in the work that I do. And I think it very much shows up as like partial edutainment, but it's also super funny. That's the whole point. Like, we got to laugh and have a good time, you know?
All right, that's about all I've got. Does anyone out there have any questions?
So you sort of, Sierra, muttered when you said go. How does that series read as Native Americans to you?
I don't like it. She's asking about the show Yellowstone. I've never seen it. I don't acknowledge it. I don't know that show. No, what is that?
Yeah, sort of.
No, I mean, here's the thing. My uncle loves Yellowstone and loves Westerns and loves things. So I'm not going to hate on anyone's enjoyment of the show. But the first time I saw it, there was like I tried to watch the pilot, and it was like it was a Native man in Wyoming with like a Navajo medicine man and lady in a headdress, but like with North Pacific Coast items and like Choctaw items. It was like a Small World After All kind of situation. And I was like, what is this? And it was, it's sort of a running joke amongst Native TV writers that we don't love Taylor, because he sucks. And he often, he has no writer's room. He has no Native writers on his show. He's cast Native actresses who are not Native.
Yes.
He is very excited to create, the sort of white savior kind of stuff we've always seen. So to me, I just find it very boring and I don't enjoy it. But I know, we made it, Jana and this writer, Matt Murray, co-wrote this episode. We have a fake Yellowstone type show on Rutherford Falls called Adirondack, and all of their parents love it. Like every cast member's parents love it. And she was like, why do people watch it? She's like, why do Indians watch it? And she just hates the show, and she gets hired to be a cultural consultant on season 3 of the show. And a lot of it was us just when people ask about Native representation, that's what it feels like. It feels like if you have hundreds of millions of dollars, why is it going to Taylor Sheridan? Why is he getting to tell our stories? He just did an interview in the Hollywood Reporter where he says that he doesn't think you need writers' rooms. He thinks he can write it all by himself. He also took credit for the legislation that was passed for missing murdered Indigenous women because he made a movie about it. And completely negating all of the Native women-led advocacy that created that legislation, all of the work that Native women did to pass it. So to me, and it's so funny because right now he's getting dragged on Twitter by all these non-Native TV writers who are very angry because of the strike. And all of the Native TV writers are like, we've been knowing about this guy. We've been hating him before it was cool. Yeah. Because so it's very personal to me. Whereas if I was just a person flipping around, even on set of when we did the Adirondack episode, there were crew members that were like, I gotta be honest, I would probably watch this show. And I was like, because part of TV is like, it's fun to sort of turn off your brain and just enjoy it. It's a soap opera. And like, I love the soap opera, so I get it. But for me personally, I think I wouldn't mind him existing if there was an equal amount of money going to Native media makers to make Native television. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah.
You have huge thoughts on Taylor Sheridan? I mean, no, I guess, kind of like Sierra said, because so many Indian people, our first bit of visibility in media was cowboys and Indians and Westerns. So I grew up watching Westerns. My whole, I was always like, Dad, this is so boring, and it'd be Clint Eastwood or, it'd be all these, that's how we saw ourselves in TV. So I totally get it that there's a lot of Native folks who super love it. I have family members who love the show. They love all the spin-offs. They're like, they can't wait to see the next one. But I also know that like now there are shows out there like Rutherford Falls, like Res Dogs, and all the other shows that are on their way coming that are actually written by Native people with Native cast, Native production folks, even the grips and all the main people behind it. Like, let's support those shows. Let's give them a chance. You know what I mean? And I think that's like, where I'd love to see that. But yeah, it's insane that he's trying to take credit for legislation. But white manning, I'm sorry.
Well, sorry, white manning. Yeah. But no, I think like, I'll say one last thing. Kimberly Guerrero plays Terry Thomas's wife on our show. And she's just a wife. She played Winona on the Native episode of Seinfeld many years ago. And then was like never asked to do comedy again after that, right? Until we cast her as Terry's wife. And she was like, it was so dark, and I don't know if there's like kids here, but she was like, I'm really happy to just live to the end of this episode. She's like, I usually die in the second act. And she's like, I'm usually like shot. And she started doing the stunts of like getting pulled and this. And she was like, I usually die so that the like white protagonist can get to the third act and figure out the crime or find the whatever. And it's not just set in the 1800s, it's set in today times. And so I think if you watch some of the shows that Native people are on, really look at it critically of like, do we live? Do we have any outside agency besides helping other character, non-Native character? Like, do we have any, levity? Are we ever funny? Do we have any romance? Like, really, the Regan character is, you never get to see us do that. You never get to see us have a rom-com or be in love. You usually see us die before the episode ends.
Do we have any other questions? Go ahead, Shiv.
Hi. So I'm an IAA alum. I used to be a creative writer. I'm Native. I am from Torres Martinez as well as the Salt River, Pima Maricopa people of Arizona. And I remember once I had written, I used to write a lot of poetry. It's part of our curriculum, write a lot of poetry. And most of it was like, man, mediocre. And the one time that I had gotten like a great ovation from my peers was the time I had written something that was from like the perspective of a Native person. It was a Native-centric piece of poetry, criticizing the use of the stoic, mystical Indian trope that is seen in like television, writing, all sorts of stuff. And it had kind of made me wonder. I'm like, why is it the one time that we have to be seen in pain? Like people they have to, in order to see us, they have to pity us. Mm-hmm. And I wondered if you had ever encountered any problems or hurdles jumping over that to make it be like, hey, we're not all sad all the time. Like, we're real people. We can be funny. We can be happy. And if there was any, like anything that kept you going through the very obvious hurdle of like, oh, Native people are just used to be tossed aside in plot narratives and killed, like you had said the actress had. Was there any specific moment where you had to like fight for, showing that Native people are people?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we, in our room, we talked about how there are stereotypes about Native people that Native people are exhausted by that white people don't even know exist. So there would be certain things of like the tricky, shifty Native. I think that like a lot of times white TV writers are like, I'll make them the president. And I'll make them like, they're still the villain, but I'll make them like the casino owner. So we're going against a stereotype. And then we're like, yeah, that's what we always are. We're always like tricky and like shady. And that's why I liked creating the Terry character, which was like, he was super strategic, but it was coming from a place and he had real motivation. And he was also just like a goofy dad. And like, he had like layers, right? So I think like for me, I really repel from trauma and showing that stuff. I've experienced that stuff, but it's not for you guys, that's for me. And like when I decide I'm ready to tell those stories, I will. I think what's really interesting is about like reservation dogs. We would talk in the room about how like I was like, no one's magical. I was like, no one turns into a wolf, no one, like nothing. I don't want any of it, because it was like the first thing out there, and I was just like, I don't want any of that stuff. And then Tasma was like, but we are magical. And I was like, it's true. And as we had like more native writers, we had more native directors and actors, like they would improv shit where it would be like, you know, like Ganadio would be like, I had a bad dream about a pufferfish and I knew this was gonna happen or whatever. And it was all told in a joking way, but it was kind of like stepping our toe into that stuff. What I think is amazing about Reservation Dogs is like, it's so of a place and of a voice that like, they go to these places that are very magical, and they are able to talk about that stuff without falling into tropes and without falling into that stuff, you know? And I will say even too, like our show, like I think there were moments of like flashback and dreams and things like that that we did that I didn't feel weird about doing by the end of the season. We sort of like bring some of that stuff in there. So I think it's like, you kind of can't think about like, am I doing this in response? Am I doing this in reaction? Am I doing, you just have to tell the story that you've always wanted to watch. You just have to tell the thing that you enjoy and that you like. And that's what every other filmmaker gets to do. And that's kind of like, I will still say like, I need to go home for Christmas. Like, I don't want to do this offensive thing. I don't want to do this because I still need to like, I have a people I have to respond to.
Yeah.
But I think fundamentally you can't live in a world of like reacting to like being worried about stuff.
Yes. Yeah, no, Sierra, you got a lot of really good points, because I think that's what it is. Like are you overcorrecting for what was already out there, or are you really being honest to what you want to tell? You know, and I think that's like the balance, and that's like the tightrope walk, you know, because I know for me, like same thing, like I have like a adverse reaction when people are like, oh, talk about the troubles and, you know, like the trials and tribulations of Native life. I'm like, I'm from the Bay Area. You know what I mean? Like it's so silly, but people just have crazy ideas, and they're all embedded in just these racist, you know, just stereotypical ideas of like who Native people are. Like this is really dumb, but I have a twin sister, we're identical. And when I was in grad school, I just randomly am telling the story, and it's my birthday, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, they didn't know that I was there. And they found out that day that my mom was having twins. And she was like, oh, it's because you were from a reservation and you had a clinic, no doctor. And I was like, bitch, I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, you know? Like I was just, but it just goes to show, like, there's people who have these assumptions about Indian folks, you know? And it's anytime I find, like, I don't accept every gig, because there are certain gigs where I'm supposed to play a role, you know what I mean? There are certain gigs where I feel like I'm gonna be tokenized. If I get a whiff of that, I'm out, you know what I mean? And so I think, like, going back to your question about, like, you know, how do you avoid or not, how do you handle that? I'm out of there. Like I'm choosy about what gigs I do. I'm choosy about the audiences that I perform to, because what I do is not for everybody, and I don't necessarily want it to be, you know, and I'm down for the people who are down to hear what I have to say on stage, and sort of what I have to say in my writing. And you know, I think it is a balance though, because I sometimes wonder, am I trying to hide this thing because I don't want to talk about that? You know, like as a writer and as an artist, you know, you grow over time and you sort of get, you know, intimate. But you're right, there are some stories that I'm not going to tell on stage. Some of it's not a set up punch kind of environment, you know, but there are certain stories, like I've done solo performances and solo shows. I feel like there's more breath there's more space to like get sort of into the nuanced, like non-jokey thing, you know, get a little bit more of the darker, heavier stuff, because that's life. Humans have both, right? So yeah, that's my response for that one.
That's also what it helps to work with other Native comedy people, because they also give you permission. There was stuff I was like, you can't do that, and they'd be like, yes, you can. Yes, you can totally do that. Like, do you remember we wrote that joke about relocation?
Yes. I think about that.
I think about that all the time.
Yes.
Me, Bobby Wilson, and Jackie wrote a pilot. There's a character in there who she's like, I represent the Kiowa, Apache, and Raider nations. She's like a huge football fan. And so there's like a whole like montage in the pilot where they have to kind of entertain these elders, and it just pops. You just kind of drop them into like a snippet of what their entertainment is. So one guy's doing like breakdancing, one guy's like telling a long prayer. And so this, you know, the Raiders kind of saying, you know, we were cast aside and we displaced and filled, you know, but with our resilience as Native people and survivance, like we shall remain. And then it was like, and that is the story of how the Raiders moved to Las Vegas. And like we started with that. We didn't have that joke, but we were like, okay, what should she talk about? And so we're pitching, and I was like, well, what if she talked about this? And we were like, oh my God, you could do it. Like we knew like the joke recipe of like, I want to make this cake. So we're like, we know that's the joke. And you were like, no, we can't do that.
like,
We
no.
can't make fun of relocation. We can't make fun. And then me and Bob were like, yeah, but what if we could? Like, just like if we did though, like what if we- And you were like, well, I don't know. I was like, well, what if we, because it's all those buzzwords. And so we started like writing the joke. And then that's when we realized the punchline. And we laughed so hard. And we were like, we have to do this. We have to put this joke in. And it's like, yes, it is making fun of really heady topics, but it's also like what that character would have done.
Totally.
We've totally given her agency and set her up to have that personality.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite jokes I've ever, I guess, co-written.
It really is great.
It was really great. And so like hopefully NBC will pick it goddamn up and we'll get to make it next year. So we'll see when the strike ends.
All right, if we don't have any other questions, we can wrap now. Thank you both so much.
Thank you for joining us this evening. We hope you enjoyed the lecture and learned a few things and had a few laughs along the way. Be sure to visit our website for future online lecture series. Yeah, thank you.